What's going on, FA Nation? Welcome to Fantasy Slam DFS NBA live stream. John Impemba here with James Grande, previewing Friday's 5-game DFS FA NBA main slate. James, we don't know what Knicks are playing. It seems like the Grizzlies might actually have less active members than the Knicks will tonight as well. A lot of injury news to get to. Odd for Friday to only have a 5-game slate. This slate is also full of top players: Harden, Westbrook, George, Jokic. So, I mean, there's a ton of value, ton of spend-up spots. This is your typical stars and scrubs lineup night, I think.
Yeah, especially when you have guys like Russell Westbrook, Paul George, and Nikola Jokic on the slate, and we have pretty much all the money in the world to spend for them.
All the money to spend on them.
Yeah. And speaking of that money, why we have that money, first off, because Mike Conley's officially been rolled out, so we're going to get 2 potential point guards there in Memphis that we can roster, as well as Kyle Anderson, who also kind of handles the ball for them. Memphis is really reeling. I mean, we don't know about Jaren Jackson, but Garrett Temple is out, Omri Caspi as well. We know that Jamal Murray's already been officially ruled out. Gary Harris we're kind of waiting on. Steven Adams and Terrence Ferguson both practiced, so it seems like they're both going to suit up for OKC. And Luke Cornett is also playing, as well as Chris Paul. He is going to play. We haven't officially heard anything on the minutes limit, but they did come out and say the other day that if he did play, there wouldn't be a limit. And as we are talking about injuries, Kyrie Irving is playing tonight, and there's also no minutes limit, which is no surprise because the hip injury is not real.
Right. It's not real.
So, yeah, it's just a fake injury. So let's go over to Vegas, where we have Memphis, Charlotte opening our slate. So, luckily the 2 games we're waiting on, Memphis, Charlotte, Boston, New York, are 7 and 7:30. So we should know at least one of them before lock. Memphis, Charlotte, 204. Charlotte 7.5 point favorites at home. That's risen 2.5 points since Mike Conley news has since that broke. Then Boston, New York is obviously the most intriguing game. A lot of people I saw talking about it in chat, viewing it like the Dallas situation last night. I want to put a big halt to that because Boston is a far better team than Detroit Pistons are. And the Knicks are probably, their cast of our players might be even worse than Dallas was. So, I mean, 13-point spread kind of tells us that. I mean, last night the Dallas spread only got up to 7, and we were wondering why. Well, don't wonder why it's 13 tonight for Boston, New York. The good thing is New York is very shorthanded. They're going to have to play all their guys since none of the new acquisitions are playing. No Dennis Smith, no DeAndre Jordan, no Wesley Matthews. So 13-point spread, 215 total. OKC Miami is a really nice total, 219. Oklahoma City 4-point favorites on the road there. Atlanta, Utah is the highest total on the board, 226. Utah 11.5 point favorites at home. And then our late night hammer, Houston travels to Denver. The Kenneth Faried revenge game of all revenge games in the world. 224, and Denver's favored by 3.5 at home.
Yeah, the Kenneth Faried revenge game. That's funny. It's a good joke. Before we jump in and break down the slate here, we got a nice read that we have to do here, and it's the lifetime membership is back at Fantasy Alarm. Fantasy Alarm had a great 2018. We hope you won in seasonal and daily fantasy sports. But we have a question for you. Do you want to win forever? Do you want to win forever? Who doesn't want to win forever? James, you want to win forever, right?
Yeah, 60% of the time, all the time, I want to win forever.
Yeah, well, we just made it a bargain to get the award-winning Playbook Pro for life, a one-time payment for just $297. Lock in the incredible savings. This is only available through the Super Bowl, so get it now. Lifetime members get special benefits like special contests, giveaways, and double prizes in all Fantasy Alarm contests. Become a lifetime member today at fantasyalarm.com/forever. Join the family today at fantasyalarm.com/forever. Join it today, play some NBA DFS, pay for it tomorrow. That's basically, seems like a little run that we're on of late, right? Just people just cashing checks here. So
in all sports, too.
Sure, in all sports for sure. So yeah, definitely have to go and check that out. FantasyLine.com/forever. Become a member of FA family for life. James, let's kick it off. Start off at that point guard position. At top is Russell Westbrook, Kyrie Irving. As you just said, Kyrie Irving's not going to have a minutes restriction. I am curious if they just let him play or not tonight. Like, even if there's a blowout, like maybe they just let him get some run because it is in New York, sort of like his home town. Potentially the team he's going to unfortunately leave to go to next year. So I wonder if they'll just let Kyrie play like 30 minutes tonight just to like get his legs back under him after missing a bunch of games. So if that's the case, like I have a lot of interest here because I think he's going to be able to do pretty much whatever he wants on the floor tonight, like he can when teams are putting actual starters on the floor, not the backups that will have the Knicks will likely be starting tonight. If you're choosing between Westbrook and Irving, what's your takes there?
I'm starting to think that you want Kyrie Irving gone. I'm just going to say it. I'm going to put it out there, and I want Boston Nation to know that John wants Kyrie Irving gone, whether he admits it on air or not. He does.
I'll admit it on air. I'm a big fan of the young guys that we have. I mean,
okay.
So I'm not. I honestly, I think if come the trade deadline, if a team goes and offers us something for Kyrie, I would strongly consider it.
It would definitely have to be a very juicy package, though, and a win now package because that's in the situation.
I mean, I keep on saying this to you, but I mean, like, and yes, Kyrie has been incredible, but this is essentially the exact same team that went to Game 7 of the Eastern Conference Finals last year. Sans Kyrie and Gordon Hayward. So, everybody seems to play better when Kyrie Irving's off the floor. So I don't know. Like it's just, I don't know. Just saying. I don't care.
Debate for a different time, but we have been talking about this for a while. I mean, I lean Westbrook, and Kyrie's been great. I just suspect this game staying closer. It's in Miami. We've gotten 65 fantasy points per game out of Westbrook over his last 4. He's averaged 13.5 points, 13.8 assists, and 13.5 rebounds over those 4 games. To go along with 22 points, that is essentially impossible to fade for me, at least in cash games, and especially when you can just, you basically are punting 2 to 3 positions tonight with Shelvin Mack, probably 2 Knicks guys, or maybe 2 Memphis guys, 1 Knicks guy, So for me, Westbrook is the cash lock. But again, you can obviously pivot to Kyrie in a tournament because that's where you're going to play him anyway. Because if you play Kyrie in cash and he plays 2 quarters, then what? You're done. So do I think you could play Kyrie in tournament? Sure. I mean, you're saving $1,400 on DraftKings. So yeah. Westbrook for cash, Kyrie for tournaments, but obviously you can play Westbrook in all formats too.
Next guys down, we have Kemba Walker and Chris Paul. Paul ruled in. There was some word before that Paul may have seen his minutes increase for this game. Still no official word that that's going to be the case, but say Chris Paul gets bumped up to 30 minutes tonight after the 25 minutes he's played the previous 2 games. $7,300 on FanDuel for a 30-minute Chris Paul, I think is definitely intriguing. What's your take on the Kemba Paul situation here?
I actually don't think it would be close at that rate, and I think I would lean Chris Paul heavily. Knowing, the one position that we've been able to attack for Denver is Jamal Murray at point guard. Monty Morris is diminutive himself. He's just, if he's 6 feet, he's, it's because his shoes. So, Chris Paul is a really good post player as a point guard. He's like 6'4", too. So I think he would have a distinct advantage over Monty Morris. And he's only 6'8" on DraftKings. And it's like one of those things that we've kind of talked about all year when you view a player at a certain price. No matter the matchup, like you just take advantage of it. The one prime example I'll always go back to is the D'Angelo Russell game against Boston where he was like $6,400 after being like $8,500 the game before. And he went for 55. Like, if Chris Paul were to play 30 minutes at 6'8", he's coming off 2 games where he already went for 30 and 32, so he already exceeded his almost exceeded his evaluation. Yeah. I think we could be looking at like 7x, 8x. So I would have a lot of interest at Chris Paul at if he were to get up to 30 minutes or no limit. If there was no limit, I'd say load up on him in all formats at his price tags.
At the same price of Chris Paul, we have Trae Young against Utah. And then on the flip side of that, Rubio against Atlanta. Atlanta obviously posing one of the best matchups for point guards in the NBA. Rubio's minutes are sort of in the mid-20s. He got close to 30 against Minnesota and had, a 40 fantasy point game in there. It looks like, we'll say 25 minutes for Rubio tonight. Do you take that versus Atlanta, or would you much rather, Trae Young at 73 or other guards in the slate?
I mean, it's really hard not to play anyone 25 minutes or more against Atlanta. Like if you're getting 25 minutes against Atlanta, you have a great possibility of averaging over a fantasy point per minute. They're dead last against point guards. So Rubio, I think, is an elite tournament play, probably a secondary cash play. And we've kind of talked about this for a couple slates now. I think Trae Young has almost become reliable enough to be considered for all formats.
Okay.
In basically every matchup, if you just go down the line, even in poor shooting nights, he's getting us a minimum of 4.5x, which obviously we want 5, but 4.5 doesn't kill anybody, and he's giving us 50-point upside at the same time. So
play Paul or Young at the same cost on FanDuel.
It all depends on that minutes limit. Like if there's no limit.
Yeah, assuming we get Paul at like 30 minutes tonight. Do you play Paul at 30 minutes versus Denver or Young at like 35 against Utah, who's one of the top teams in the NBA against the position?
Chris Paul.
Okay, fair enough. Other point guards as we go down the list. I mean, there's Tyler Johnson against OKC. I'm probably not going to go there and then you dip down into that value we talked about. Shelvin Mack could potentially start tonight in case of Conley. Javon Carter. They've talked a lot about him, but every time he sort of gets mentioned, he rarely ever produces. So I'm just not going to believe in him at all. So for me, it's Shelvin Mack, and then maybe we see Kadeem Allen start. Kadeem Allen of the Knicks has played 17 and 18 minutes in each of the last 2 games. So at the very least, he has a role because they really don't have many other guards. It's basically him, Trier, and Dotson as like the 3 guards on that roster right now. So those are the 2 spend down spots, I think, at point guard tonight, and Mack and Allen.
Yeah, Mack is a lock. As long as we assume he's starting. I don't know if the lineup still hasn't come out, right? There's still no official word on it. So assuming he starts, he's a lock. I mean, really, he's a lock anyway because now they're missing Anderson and Conley. So 2 more guards. Temple's out. Everyone's out. So Mack is going to play regardless. It is interesting, and you brought up a good point in chat earlier that the Knicks, although they traded all these pieces, they didn't lose any front court pieces. Everyone that they lost was in the backcourt.
Right.
So, like you said, there's only really 3 guys, unless you want to play Hazonia or Lance Thomas, who's 6'9", or Hazonia, who's 6'8", at shooting guard. That would be silly because then you're getting, Marcus Smart is going to dribble past all these guys. Kyrie's going to dribble past, there's probably just 25 minutes just dangling out there. So, they could just elect to go the route where Dotson and Trier play 40 minutes. But at the same time, do you want to burn these guys out? I don't know. So I think there is a path to Kadeem Allen. I would play him in cash if we found out he was starting. If we don't find out, I would probably just he would just find his way into my tournaments.
If we find out that both Mack and Allen are starting, would you double punt point guard on FanDuel? Or is there a point guard that you would think is worth paying up for?
I mean, I think Westbrook is worth paying up for. So, I don't think I would double punt it, and I would probably still lean Shelvin Mack because I think that game has a better chance of just being, I guess, more competitive.
Charlotte's not a good team, per se.
Right.
And
you still have Gasol. Yeah, exactly.
They'll just keep that in the game. So I kind of agree with you there. Over at shooting guard at the top, James Harden. We mentioned in chat, people Chris Paul's back. No James Harden tonight.
Yeah.
I mean, the last 2 games that Chris Paul's played, James Harden's gone for 71 or 69.2 in 2 straight games over on FanDuel. So
71-75 in 2 straight on DK. It's so strange.
Right. He's put up the exact same total. So No, in the past, maybe that's what we were thinking. But I mean, Harden Harden. Now, maybe if we find out that Paul's going to have no minutes limit or he gets to play 30 instead of 25, and that's 5 more minutes where maybe Harden doesn't get the ball as much, then sure. But, I mean, Harden's still a very elite play. FanDuel is 13.6 still, so, like, super high price. But he got the dip below 13K on DraftKings, and I think that's where it's probably worth taking advantage of that price.
I mean, we're talking about, as of right now, the best player in the NBA.
For sure.
So, we're willing to play guys on the Warriors with 5 stars. Last night, the Warriors were owned across the board, everyone from 20 to 40%. Why wouldn't we? I know obviously there's a pricing discrepancy there, and I'm not like just excluding that, but why does Chris Paul suddenly be like, oh, we can't play the best player in the NBA, but we could play all 5 Warriors? So, I mean, he's giving us 70 fantasy points, which is what we need. So, I mean, if Harden goes out there and gives us 80 tonight and Russell Westbrook goes out there and gives us 60, well, you know what? We win with Harden at 80. So, I think he's an elite play. Whatever format you want to use him in, I assume he's going to be highly owned in tournaments to opposed to cash because everyone's going to go the Westbrook Jokic route.
I would probably agree with you on that one. If we go down from him, it's Donovan Mitchell on FanDuel. He's $8,800 against Atlanta. Now, we said that Rubio's got his minutes around 25 because they've been letting Mitchell handle the ball a lot more of late, play some point guard. I love him in this spot. I think this is, again, if you're not paying for Harden, I think Mitchell is someone that you really need to focus on tonight. I know you worry a little bit about the spread there, and there could be a blowout here as well. Atlanta, not a good team. Utah, a really tough place to play. But still, just a really good spot for Mitchell. And on a 5-game slate, like you're okay with if he goes for like 40 plus instead of the 60 plus, because there aren't many people on the slate that have sort of the ceiling that he possesses.
Yeah, and I don't think, like, if you're looking at it from an ownership perspective, I'm not sure how many people are going to pay 8.8K with Ricky Rubio back. So from that perspective, I kind of like Donovan Mitchell for tournaments too. Just because I don't think a lot of people are going to pay for it.
Yeah, I'm not going to argue with you. I think that's a fair call there. And I'm just a big fan of him in general. Right. After Mitchell, again, it dips huge on FanDuel. It's Jeremy Lamb, who I think you can play now that like Kyle Anderson's out. I think he's someone that's certainly in play because, again, I'm not sure who exactly they're going to go ahead and guard. We get news right here that both Wade is going to be able to play. Tyler Johnson's going to start tonight over Wayne Ellington. Don't know if that puts Tyler Johnson more in play for you against OKC because we have to assume that Winslow is a point guard and shooting guards have had a lot of success against OKC this year. Yep. So, if Johnson's going to start playing the wing a little bit, there's some opportunity for him there. But back to shooting guard, Lamb. Jaylen Brown I like. He's $5,500 on FanDuel. Got priced up a little bit there, but on DraftKings, Brown's a little bit cheaper at $4,900. If we do think this game's going to be blowout, we know that Jaylen Brown excels with Kyrie off the floor. He's playing a lot better anyway, so I still think there's a path for Brown to be a decent play tonight.
I mean, he's just one of those guys that just you give him minutes right now, and he's just going to put up a lot of shots, and if they start falling, he's going to keep taking them, and they've been going in. I mean, 3 of the last 4, he shot over 55% from the floor, and he's gone for 33 fantasy points in 3 of those last 4 games. So I think he's really nice for tournaments. But if you start getting in that territory where you're going to play him in cash, I don't know. I mean, maybe on FanDuel it's a viable option because there aren't a lot of options necessarily. Because on DK, you could play literally anybody. At shooting guard, you could play Shelvin Mack, you could play Tyler Johnson, you could literally anybody. So I also think the reason why we would stay away from him is if we found out Alonzo Trier was starting at point guard. He's shooting guard eligible, so he would probably become one of the top priorities on the Knicks, at least for me, if he was starting, because we've seen his ability to not only score but do other things on a basketball court, right, which we don't really get from guys like Kevin Knox. So I mean, I think I would probably prioritize Trier if he were starting over Brown in a cash game, but Brown is an elite tournament play at that.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you there. I like Brown in GPPs. Trier much better. Eric Gordon, thoughts on him?
I still think he's fine for tournaments. There's playing him. They play him with Chris Paul. Like he's still the third guy on the team, especially with Capella out. Well, the third offensive guy. I just don't know. He just doesn't give us anything else. So we just need shots to fall for Eric Gordon to succeed.
All right. So we have a Knicks starting lineup. Kadeem Allen at point guard. Damian Dotson at shooting guard. Knox, small forward. Lance Thomas, for whatever reason, still starting at power forward. And Noah Vonleh is at center to begin the game tonight. So Allen and Dotson are the two guys starting in that front court tonight, which is kind of like a better, on FanDuel at least, if you believe those will be the guys getting the run. Like they're both cheaper. Like Trier costs more than Dotson, so you're getting a little bit more salary savings there. Again, I don't know how much like I trust the rotations because we just like the rotations there in New York are just horrible anyways. I think Allen is certainly a guy that you can believe in, but in terms of like, I don't think Thomas is going to play a lot. Like I still think that goes to Zonia. We've seen him just play a bunch of minutes, and we'll get to that at small forward in a moment. But based off that starting lineup, like how much interest do you now have in a guy like Dotson over Trier, or do you still like lean Trier off the bench?
I think Dotson becomes a priority in cash, especially on FanDuel where you could just punt that second shooting guard.
He's $100 above min price on FanDuel.
Yeah, I think it's a must. I think he's going to be. Him and Mac are probably one of the two of the highest owned players on the slate. So as he's made 10 starts this year, which we kind of were talking about off air that we kind of both suspected he would start because we saw it in the year. So during those 10 starts, he's played 30 minutes per game. He's given us 10 points, 5 rebounds, 1.5 assists, and about a half a steal a game as well. So at min price, that basically gets us to where we need to be, even at $3,700. And, we've seen earlier in the year, we were touting him a few times, and he went for 40. Do I think he's going to go for 40? No, but there is a clear path to reaching and exceeding 5X tonight. If I were to say, I wouldn't be surprised if he gave us 7X, 8X at his salary.
No, I wouldn't either. I mean, it wouldn't take much if he had 7X there.
Exactly. Right.
5 fantasy points. I mean, if he's going to start, and they're blowout proof. It's not like this game goes up 30 and all of a sudden the scrubs go in. They're starting the scrubs.
They're playing. Yeah, they're just playing.
They're in anyways. Okay, so Dotson over Trier at this point in cash games. You still go Trier in GPPs?
I mean, I think Dotson is a strong play all formats, but I think Alonzo Trier is a very strong tournament play. Because, he gave us those big outings last week and 2 weeks ago off the bench anyway. So it's not like, that hasn't really impacted his, production.
Sure. Okay, if we're going down a little bit further, Monty Morris is a shooting guard on FanDuel starting again tonight. Chris Paul, tougher matchup. Still in on him, though?
Yeah, do we think he's going to play 40 minutes? No. It's hard to predict. Will Barton did get in foul trouble there, so that obviously could have contributed. But I do think he still is going to play extend and run. There's a reason why he started, and you're not just going to not play someone who went for 27 and 7.
Right.
It's just hey, thanks for that game, but 20 minutes tonight, and that's it. So yeah. I'm cool with Monty Morris for tournaments for sure.
Okay. Any other shooting guards you're taking a look at here?
No, the Knicks. Now it's the Knicks. I don't know, and I don't want to. I really think it's a different situation than we got in Dallas last night.
Okay.
But I think Dotson is the clear play, and then Hazonia, who we're going to mention at small forward as well.
Yeah, for sure. As we go on to small forward, as you mentioned, Paul George is at the top. I'm a big Paul George guy. I think he's perfectly fine in all formats on this slate tonight. He's 11-4. He's going for 60 fantasy points, 50-plus fantasy points, pretty much on the reg at right now. No worries for me on this matchup against Miami.
Yeah, nor should you be. And I want to just preface it by saying you can play them together. Anybody, if you want, Paul George, Westbrook, if you want to play them together, play them together. They're both averaging 60 fantasy points over the last 4 games. So I mean, what more do you need?
Right. Below them, we have the two guys in Miami, probably going to be tasked to guarding him with Justice Winslow and Josh Richardson. Feelings on those two? I mean, again, point guard wise, Winslow's been, tougher matchup against OKC, but he's going to have the size advantage on Westbrook. Going to be slower. I don't know if he's going to be able to stick with Westbrook or not defensively if they go down that route. But if on offense, I think you may have the advantage there. Richardson on the wing. Wing players have done well against OKC. How are you feeling about them two players?
I mean, I'm going to side with Zeus with this one. He, just let us know that he's just whatever. He's lukewarm. He's also hungry, so that could be the case. But he's just said they're okay plays. Not priorities in our lineups tonight.
And GVPs, Will Barton back in play for you?
Definitely. And I think the ownership takes a huge hit tonight. But, foul trouble ruins people's nights sometimes. And, he's been really good before that game. So I have no problem going right back to the well with Will Barton.
I don't disagree with you too much there. Joe Ingles, Nick Batum, Taurean Prince, any of those three?
Ingles probably the most because we get Atlanta here, and he's just consistent. And the minutes have actually been very nice to see. 33.4 over his last 5. That's kind of that's an increase. But Zeus again, he's telling me he likes Ingles tonight. Yeah. Doesn't necessarily like the other guys, but he does like Kevin Knox at just 5K on FanDuel for tournaments as well.
So updating as we go down this list here, Jaren Jackson Jr. unlikely to play tonight, so Memphis gets even slimmer.
Woo!
We hit up Kevin, we hit up Kevin Knox and Mario Hezonja. Both of those guys in play for sure.
Who would you prioritize one or the other?
So this is what I've been trying to figure out. I think everybody is just auto playing Kevin Knox. And I don't blame you. Scoring wise, he's probably going to be he may be their leading overall point scorer tonight. But we've seen Hezonja be a little bit more aggressive in other categories this year. He can score, but we've also seen him get, he had a run of games where he had 3 and 5 steals in 3 straight games. We don't see that stuff from Knox. So for me, I feel like Hezonja might actually have a higher overall ceiling tonight, unless Knox all of a sudden goes outside of his norm and gets some assists or gets some steals or blocks. He's pretty much just a straight scorer, doesn't get a lot of rebounds. So I think I'm going Hezonja, at least in cash games, over Knox. Maybe Knox in GPPs because he's going to stick on the floor, and maybe he goes for 30 actual because they don't have anybody else to score.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you prioritizing Hezonja. The one thing is that they're losing Burke and Hardaway out of their starting lineup, and they take so many shots. And Knox is already a volume guy. He already takes so many shots. So who else? We know Lance Thomas is one guy who's not going to shoot the ball. So there's only 4 starters that are actually going to take shots. So that's just kind of why I would play Knox, because he's just going to take 25 shots in pretty much every scenario.
We have a starting lineup for Memphis. It is going to be Sheldon Mack, Javon Carter, Justin Holiday, JaMychal Green, and Marc Gasol. So Capicola, our boy, Caboclo, the Italian cold cut man, however we're gonna call him. You know his name. It's Bruno something, right? Isn't it?
Caboclo, yeah, you had it right.
I had it right, Caboclo.
Yeah.
He's coming off the bench probably, playing
Gabagool.
Yeah, all right. So he's gonna come off the bench for them because again, I don't know who else they have. So I think him and Rob, we saw the last 2 games or last game play well. Those guys are probably in play in GBPs as punt plays. JaMychal Green's only $100 more. $100 above min price over on FanDuel. Yeah. We can just jump the power forward unless there's more small forwards you have interest in here.
Nope. I'm ready to go.
We'll start off with some value here. Green starting $100 above min price. Rob is also, I think, at a similar price. Yep, $3,600. Probably coming off the bench for them against Charlotte. A matchup that we like to attack front courts in. I know we're all in on Marc Gasol, and we'll touch upon that at center, but starting JaMychal Green, I think, is definitely in play in probably all formats.
Yeah, 3,600. Again, it's we're almost there's almost too much value right now. and
we're hitting too much value. We are,
and there might be a route to kind of say screw it, play one star and kind of balance out your lineup and try to fade some of this, or do the contrarian pivot and play Kabakalo, play Ivan Rabb like you said, who have played more minutes than JaMychal Green over the last 2 games. So there might be something there. But, I mean, at the same time, like JaMychal Green, again, we mentioned on the podcast last night, he's averaging a fantasy point per minute this year.
Right.
Now he's starting. And he's going to give us, what we think is 30 minutes as a starter. I mean, if he's only $100 off min salary, you can't fade that in cash. Even if like the last two games where you got to play him in cash. You can fade him in tournaments, but I think in cash games, it's JaMychal Green, and then you move on.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree with you. I think for sure, just the price is there. If we do go up top, Farid, Collins, and Tatum are the top 3 price guys on FanDuel. I don't really have any interest in. I mean, I say I don't have any interest. Like, sure, it's a small slate. Maybe you can throw him out there. I just feel like Jokic versus Farid is just a mismatch. So I don't love Farid in this matchup here. I really don't love Collins against Utah either. So the first guy I was looking at was Tatum. But what's your take on those top 3 guys?
I mean, I think Farid, if you were believing in revenge narratives, is fine. But like you said, like Jokic is over 7 feet tall. Kenneth Farid is 6'7". That is it's not even. Yes, Farid is athletic. Whatever, athleticism can only get you so far when you're 6 inches shorter than your opponent. So, I mean, I think Jokic is going to have, and plus the amount of passes that Jokic is going to be able to he's going to look over Farid and just, like, there's a triple-double locked in. And foul trouble is obviously looming. I think Tatum is a really strong tournament play. I'm interested to see his ownership because he's not too expensive. And he's been playing fairly well. He's kind of been up and down, but he's been better with Kyrie in the lineup this year. We've mentioned that a whole bunch. I feel like he doesn't try too hard because, like, oh man, I really have to step up my game without Kyrie. So I do like Tatum. And then the third guy you mentioned was John Collins.
Yeah.
Who I think is fine for tournaments. I'm just worried about the minutes, man. I don't understand why they've dipped out below 30 in 3 of his last 4 games.
Yeah, I don't know about the fouls, I think, probably, right? Or no?
No, he's actually been not as handsy as we're accustomed to, only averaging 2.8 fouls over his last 4 games, yet he's played less than 30 in 3 of the 4. And the 4th is 30 exactly, so...
While we're on the point guard position here, there seems to be again some more news that maybe Luke Cornett is actually starting over Thomas. There's some quote unquote conflicting reports here. I would have interest in Cornett if he's starting tonight over Thomas for sure. I mean, you and I think Thomas is a 0. We don't even really,
0.
Don't know why he's still on the roster. Never mind the fact that whatever. So if Cornett starts, I have some interest in Cornett here.
Maybe because there's like kind of a lack in center depth, but I don't know how I feel about this rotation, especially now that do I think Cantor plays? No, but he did play 9 minutes last game. Your boy Mitchell Robinson's up in the 20s. Like, there's now 3 centers that we have to worry about. I don't know how I feel necessarily about Cornett and how much I trust it, especially considering we're just paying up for Gasol or Jokic and essentially, right? I mean, that's
Cornett's a power forward on FanDuel, so I mean,
okay,
he can fill in that void there. Steven Adams is back tonight. So is Terrence Ferguson. We didn't talk about him at shooting guard. I know that's a guy that you had been in on when starting before. Cornett is officially starting, according to this update. He's Vonleh moving to power forward, Cornett at center. So, anyways, with Adams starting and Ferguson there, thoughts on Jeremy Grant?
I have less interest. I thought he was viable all formats. Now I think he's probably a little too expensive. I don't think it's a bad matchup. I think him and James Johnson match up pretty well against one another. And like if Kelly Olynyk comes in the game, he's too athletic for Kelly Olynyk. So I don't think he's terrible, but I have less interest in him for cash than I did prior to Adams being ruled in.
Any thoughts on Vonleh, or still the same sentiments regarding Cornett, just that front court kind of?
Yeah, not with Cornett. I think Cornett only muddies the waters even more.
Okay. I kind of agree with you a little bit. I feel like the center spot maybe is a little where the mix match could come there. I mean, I guess Hazonia plays power forward and Knox does too, so there could be a different rotation. You're right. So maybe those guys are a little less valuable. Finally, is averaging a double against Boston in 3 games this year. Marcus Morris, Millsap, Favors. Thoughts on any of those 3 guys?
Millsap sees a huge bump in usage rate with Jamal Murray off the floor, and thankfully the minutes are back on the rise, so I don't think it would be the worst play. We do have to consider PJ Tucker defense here, though. I don't know if they would put him on Barton or not, but I can't imagine them cross matching Eric Gordon on Millsap. So I suspect we'd see PJ Tucker, and I think there's some merit to that when you look at Millsap's averaging 9 actual points and 16 fantasy points against him. But usage rates are up, so if you want to, look at that, he averages 5 more fantasy points at home as well. So I don't think he's the worst play, and the price tag is nice, so he's decent. It's just tough matchup.
Yeah, fair enough. As we go further down, we kind of hit on Green and Rab already. Olynyk was probably the only other guy I would throw out there. As we've kind of talked in the past, now that Derrick Jones Jr. is out and maybe towards the trade deadline, they're trying to showcase them a little bit more. Yep. There's a path to Olynyk playing more minutes than he's been. He's been playing about 18 minutes the last 2 games. 22 and 17 actually. Is there any upside to you at min price for him?
Yes, but do we need to do it with all the value? I'm not sure. But it's only a 5-game slate, so this would be the slate you do it. You don't do this on a 10-game slate. You do this on a 5-game slate.
Right. All right. Over at center, Jokic at the top against Houston. I think we're all in agreement that he's probably one of the top plays. But is he the top play with everything that's going on that's Memphis Charlotte game? Gasol went for 60 against them earlier this year, just a week ago or so. Yep. Now he's just the only guy they have.
Does that worry you at all that they could limit his minutes? Because we've seen that throughout the year that when Noah's been healthy, they're just okay with playing Gasol less minutes. And I'm not saying I'm gonna roster joke him. No, I'm just saying now with Ivan Reb also in the mix, no Mike Conley, Charlotte, do they, this game isn't, what does this game mean to them? I think Gasol is in a great spot. I'm not denying that at all. I'm just, wondering with all these guys out, Kyle Anderson magically injured again, Mike Conley not playing, how far do they push Gasol?
It's a great question. I mean, I think at least at the beginning, he should still play around 30 minutes, right? Unless his game gets out of hand, then of course they'll probably sit him. But I don't imagine they're just going to all of a sudden rest him. Again, especially if they're still sort of showcasing him for possible trades. I think we'll still see him play a good amount of minutes here. I think he's going to be pretty chalky here. But if we have that, I would go on again. Jokic at the top. Gasol. Thoughts on Gobert or Horford?
I mean, this Gobert news of him crying is pretty weird to think about, because I think we should factor it in. And I don't know how grudgy he can be, but wouldn't this kind of feel like one of those games where you go into the locker room, he probably did get snubbed realistically. I mean, he's averaging 15, 13, 2 and 2, the former defensive player of the year. Wouldn't this be one of those games where when you get in the locker room, you're all right, get me the ball. I want the ball tonight. I want to show them what
everybody why I was snubbed. Yeah, it's like that Dame Lillard game where Dame got snubbed and he went out and put up 60-something points.
I'm not saying Rudy Gobert, and we're not saying Rudy Gobert, both of us. Dame Lillard is a different offensive talent.
Right.
But Gobert has shown a lot of progression offensively, and there's a reason why 15 points a game is his career high. It's Atlanta. So, I think there is something there. I do think there's something there.
Thoughts on Horford? Maybe Whiteside, now that we know Adams is definitely playing tonight?
I have mild interest on Horford, more on FanDuel because more on DK because his FanDuel price is kind of crazy at 7-8, and he could be on the court for 24 minutes before Aaron Baines and Tice are playing. Is Time Lord in the G League?
Yeah, last I saw they called him up, but he may have been. There's no update saying he was sent back down, so he may be with the team right now.
So they have 4 options. Like if this game gets in a hand, like Horford's off the floor. So mild interest on DK. Whiteside, yeah, sure. Boom or bust. You're gonna get 100. You're gonna get 100, or you're gonna get 5. He's definitely on the All GPP team. Yeah. And I think Steven Adams on the flip side is a little too underpriced, at least on DraftKings. 6.4K. Yeah, it's a pretty nice price tag for a guy who gets 35 a night.
He does. And again, especially if they do end up taking Whiteside off the floor or whatever reason, then he gets, Bam, who's, fine, but, Whiteside's obviously the more imposing defender.
Right. I agree with that sentiment completely.
Any interest in the guys below them, Dedmon, Len, Mitchell Robinson, and GPPs?
I think Len. I think we touched on it last night. I think this is the tables are it's a new time in Atlanta. They're going to play their young guys. Dedmon and Bazemore just kind of being axed out, and I think Alex Len makes sense in the tournament. If again, you're doing it on a 5-game slate, you're not doing it on a 10-game slate. So
I agree.
I think there is a path to some Alex Len run here.
Yeah, I like Mitchell Robinson. Obviously, I always say this. I mean, the blocks of this kid, especially on FanDuel, absolutely ridiculous. Like 4.32, 4.32 the last 5
That's pretty
games.
Good.
Right, like you're getting 9 to 12 fantasy points in blocks alone. Never mind the fact that he's going to give you, if he's on the floor for 20 plus minutes, foul's always an issue, but he's going to give you 7 to 10 rebounds. You can score the basketball a little bit as well. So Mitchell Robinson at 5K on GBPs, I have some interest. The problem is center is the deepest of this small slate. So you really want to play a guy like Jokic or Gasol. It seems like you're sort of leaving money on the table if you go down and play Mitchell Robinson, but it's also a contrarian way if he goes off and plays 35 minutes for whatever reason tonight in a blowout. Who knows?
It's just so muddied. I want Enes Kanter to get a new home so they could just play the guy.
I agree.
And then Robinson obviously gets. Well, it'll be more comfortable rostering Mitchell Robinson, because who knows what Fizdale's doing, and if
I don't think Kanter sees the floor tonight. Not with Kornet back. I don't see it happening.
I don't either, but it's isn't it? I'm uncomfy thinking about that Nick center situation now that there's 3 guys that all on the roster. It's just an uncomfortable feeling. I don't know.
The thing is, to me, at least in my opinion, Robinson's really the only. Well, aside from assuming that Kanter doesn't play, Robinson's the only true center. Kornet's a stretch player. Vonleh's sort of a stretch player a little bit. So I don't know. That's how I feel about it.
I don't disagree. I don't disagree. It's just I don't know. There's 3 of them, and Enes Kanter at one time was giving us 50 fantasy points tonight. So
I know it's crazy. He'll be traded for sure. I think him and DeAndre Jordan will be out of town real quick there in New York. So
and Wes Matthews as well.
Right, and Wes Matthews as well. And we'll still have to deal with this miserable Knicks team, but we get to play Dennis Smith Jr. every night. So
sure.
Yeah, play on now because he's going to be 10K soon. All right, guys, that wraps up today's live stream. James and I will be in subscriber chat. Now that all these sort of lineups, injury news are finished up, lineups are coming out shortly. I'll throw some pivots out there for you as well. Good luck, everybody, tonight.
Later, guys.